Good morning, good afternoon. My apologies that I was disconnected briefly. I think we are now ready to resume our session. Welcome you all. And with your permission, I think we can really get into the session so that we are not running late. Let me ask my colleagues, Bharati. Bharati, you have already uh, started with the introduction part with the video when I was left
No,
out
not
for a
yet.
few minutes. Okay,
Not
then
yet.
over
The
to you, Bharati. Over to
Are we
you
live
then.
now?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Over to you. Thank
So
you.
Thank you, Pin. Good afternoon, everyone from Bangkok, and I would like to welcome you to our session on child labor, which is organized by the International Labour Organization, the ILO, in collaboration with UNICEF. My name is BHARATI PFLUG, and I'm the Senior Specialist on the Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work here at the ILO in Bangkok. This session is held in the context of the 2021 International Year on the Elimination of Child Labor. And this is really a year where we hope to see that move from commitment to action by stakeholders. And this is a year that will lead us to the 5th Global Conference on Child Labor, which will be hosted by South Africa next year. And then, of course, post that, we will move on to the first deadline within SDG Target 8.7, which refers to the elimination of all forms of child labor by 2025. That is in 4 really short years. Target 8.7, of course, also contains the eradication of forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. We're also holding this session in the context of Alliance 8.7, which is a global multi-stakeholder partnership committed to achieving Target 8.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Currently, over 240 partners form the Alliance, and we're very happy to see that some of them are able to join us on the panel here today. The Alliance seeks to bring together a set of diverse stakeholders who all play key roles in achieving SDG Target 8.7. Among the 240 partners, there are 22 Pathfinder countries, and these are countries that have volunteered and committed to go faster and further in contributing to Target 8.7. And they have also committed to be regional and global leaders on these issues. In the Asia Pacific, there are 4 Pathfinder countries: Nepal, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Fiji. And again, we're very happy to have one of the Pathfinder countries from the Asia Pacific with us here today, and that is the government of Vietnam. I would like to give you a very brief overview of today's session, which we will start with 2 short videos, one from the ILO Deputy Director General, Ms. Martha Newton, and that one will be followed by a video from the Nobel Laureate Kailash Satyarthi. Following the 2 videos, I will hand over to the moderator of this session, Ms. Panuda Bunpala, and the 7 panelists who will join us for the discussion. We do have a full agenda today, and we have planned time for questions at the end of the discussion. For members of the audience, you will see a Q&A facility on your screen. So please click on that and use it to submit any questions to the panelists. Your questions will be anonymous, but if you feel like it, feel free to add either your organization or country, especially if you feel that that might help the panelists in being a bit more specific in their responses. And I have also been asked to remind speakers to keep in mind the interpretation and to please speak clearly and not too quickly. So that's it from me at this point in time. Can we please start with the 2 opening videos now? Thank you.
It's a pleasure to address you today at this important event. For over 20 years, the Asia and Pacific region has made significant and steady progress against child labor. Yet there are still 62 million children in child labor in the region and 152 million globally. This International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor presents a valuable opportunity to step up action against child labor. Countries have established strong legal frameworks and integrated child labor concerns into education sector plans and social protection programs, and adopted national action plans. But we need to become more effective, and we need to move at a faster pace, even in the face of the huge challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. Business can help drive this agenda, not only by generating decent jobs, but by ensuring that in their operations and supply chains, children's right to be free from child labor is respected. This means clear policies against child labor, effective due diligence, fair business practices, and support for remediation if needed. Transparency all along the supply chain is vital. In Asia and the Pacific, Alliance 8.7 research shows that between 12% and 26% of goods and services produced in Asia for exports are made with child labor. If we consider child labor used in production for domestic markets, it is even clearer that the considerable efforts need to be done on local markets as well as on exportable products to ensure that supply chains are child labor free. Our call is for a renewed, concerted, and coordinated effort to tackle the root causes of child labor. Partnerships and coordination mechanisms are essential in this regard, and Alliance 8.7 provides a platform to link governments, workers, and employers' organizations and civil society to identify what works and how to bring these solutions to scale. Soon, we will celebrate World Day Against Child Labor and launch new global estimates of child labor, bringing the challenge into clearer focus. So let's make the most of the opportunities we have in the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor to increase the pace towards our shared goal.
Friends, I know that many of you have been a party to the commitments and pledges we have made for the eradication of child labor over the years. But I am also aware that many of you had played a strong leadership role in achieving remarkable success during that time. But I am afraid to say that the business as usual won't work. No rhetoric, no good word, no good intent even can meet the challenge which we are facing due to pandemic and its devastating effect on children. We know the problem, and we also know the solutions that we have learned in many years. Therefore, we need not to reinvent solutions like SDGs, ILO conventions, UN Global Compact or OECD guidelines, etc. What we have to reinvent is our inner conscience, our collective moral responsibility, our deep compassion for children, adequate global political will, and new ways to mobilize resources and finances. What we need is a sense of urgency for our children. Dear business leaders, you are not simply money-making machines. What you do today is going to impact the present and future of humankind. Make sure that no child labor is employed in your supply chain. How could you justify that American and European companies cannot employ children in their own countries, but they can easily engage child labor in developing world through their supply chain? Dear friends, we have to ensure fair share for our children. We have launched a campaign, Fair Share, to end child labor. Fair share in resources, budgetary allocations and ODAs. Fair share in policies and fair share in social justice programs. Friends, we cannot afford to lose all the progress we have made over the years through this hard work. We have to be bold enough, we have to be compassionate enough, and we have to start now without wasting any moment, because every child matters, every childhood matters, every minute matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much for very inspiring messages from ILO Deputy Director General, Ms. Martha Newton, and also from Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, Nobel Laureate, who have been the champion in combating child labor over the years. Panada Bunpala, ILO Regional Office for Asia Pacific, I will now start moderating our session today. We will have with us 7 speakers, and hopefully we'll have enough time to have 2 rounds of for panel members to share their comments and their thoughts. And also, hopefully, we will have time for Q&A session. The first speaker with us today is Mr. Dang Ho Nam from the government of Vietnam. Mr. Nam is Director General of the Department of Children Affairs of MOLISA. Mr. Nam is the focal point for Alliance 8.7 in Vietnam. He has been actively involved in child labor issues for many, many years. He is also the founder of Child Helpline in Vietnam. Mr. Nam, as a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7, the global partnership on SDG Target 8.7, what are some of the prioritized solutions or measures in Vietnam to tackle child labor, especially now in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic? The floor is yours, Mr. Nam. Thank you.
Phát biểu, xin trân trọng cảm ơn. Thank you, Mr. Kabbalah. Dear distinguished guests, today I'm very glad to join this meeting today. The signal is not very good. And the child labor is a very global issues and complex issues, especially in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Vietnam is also affected by these issues. According to Vietnam's 2018 National Survey on Child Labor across the country, there are about 1 million children aged 5 to 17, 8 years engaged in child labor, so about 5.4% of population, child population, which is about 4.2% higher than the world average. And more concerningly, about 2% lower than the regional average. Among these children, 50% works in hazardous and dangerous conditions. The survey data shows a positive trend in the total number of economically active children attending school at a rate of 63% compared to only 43% in 2012. This also contributes significantly to the Vietnam's successful negotiations of the comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, which has shown no zero tolerance on child labor. For Vietnam's government, we have been made a great effort to join the Alliance 1.7 globally, and to achieve our goals, will play as a part among the pathfinder countries to cooperate and exchange with others, and our experience in the prevention and reduction of child labor. We have worked with the ILO and other pathfinder countries to promote actions in Vietnam and others to conduct research and share knowledge on initiatives and measures, an effective use of resource, and to contribute to eliminating child labor in all forms at regional and global levels. We're also implementing international commitments on child labor through the improvement of laws and policies on the child labor preventions in line with the UN International Convention on the Rights of the Child and the ILO Conventions 182 and 138. Vietnam's also strengthening compliance with international labor standards, especially those related to child labor, in a new generation free um, uh, free trade agreement such as CPTPP and EVFTA. And Vietnam's revised labor code 2019 has updated, supplemented, and amended regulations on minors that are more in line with the international standards on child labor, including minimum wage age, working hours, working conditions, and jobs and workplace in which the employment of minors is prohibited or permitted. And the scope of the Labor Code 2019 has also extended to informal sectors where there's a high risk of child labor. And the Ministry of Labor, Invalid and Social Affairs has also issued a circular number 09 dated in November on the 12th November 2020, detailing and guideline the implementation of a number of articles in the Labor Code 2019 on minor workers, which also a specific regulation on the employment of persons under 13 and under 15. And thirdly, we're also implementing the National Child Prevention and Reduction Programs 2016 and 2020, and issuing the national programs for 2021 and 2025 with a vision to 2030 to promote the following solution. First, regarding the state management agencies and relevant government organization, we focus on build capacity of authorities at all levels and capacity of relevant agencies and organization and of employers in preventing and reducing child labor. We're also enhancing intersectoral collaboration in prevention and detections, intervention in support service related to child labor, and increasing responsibility at all levels and sectors, and the implementation of their assigned duties. We're also strengthening the child labor monitoring and evaluation systems and develop, implement processes and network for prevention, detection, support, and intervention for children engaged in and at risk of child labor, which is also in line with the existing child protection system. We
Mr.
also
Nang,
strengthen
may I
inspection
interrupt you to sum up your? Can you sum up your point, please? Can you kindly sum
tóm
up?
tắt
Thank you.
lại tóm tắt nội dung của anh và tổng kết được không? Anh có thể được không? And also some measures for employers and also for families and children. And so that we can provide the best benefits and for the best interest regarding the child labor's problems. And in summing up, with our coordinated policies, and Vietnam is step by step solving the problem of child laborers in line with the UN international conventions, which is also in relation with the new generation free trade agreement that is in compliance with the labor standards. And I would like to say thank you to your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Nam. Many strong initiatives we have heard from you. Thank you so much. The next speaker is from the International Union of Food, Agriculture, Hotel, Restaurant, Catering, Tobacco, Allied Workers Association, or IUF. We have with us Dr. Hidayat Greenfield, Regional Secretary of IUF. Dr. Hidayat is responsible for IUF members in 21 countries in Asia Pacific region, and these responsibilities include advancing human rights in many IUF sectors. Dr. Hidayat, what measures has IUF taken with regard to the elimination and prevention of child labor? And also, what are some of the challenges you are facing? You have 4 minutes, Dr. Hidayat, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for the time. I want to focus on the agricultural sector because the majority of child labor occurs in the agricultural sector. And as we know, most of that actually is the children of plantation and agricultural farm workers and small farmers working alongside their parents. And we have to tackle that in agriculture. For us, I just want to focus on 3 very concrete drivers of child labor in agriculture. The first is the piece rate wage system. The second is unfair crop prices. And the third is debt, meaning family debt, but debt resulting from a lack of access to rights. In the first instance on piece rate wages, what we're talking about is that predominantly in agriculture, whether it's plantations or farms, agricultural workers are paid piece rates according to volume, kilogram, bunch, or area of land. They're not paid a fixed wage. And because of the piece rates combined with quotas and targets, it creates tremendous pressure on agricultural workers to fulfill targets, to meet quotas in order to earn a living wage. In many cases, they cannot meet those quotas and targets and end up with a poverty wage or no wage at all. This creates a compulsion to mobilize their own children to assist them, to work with them, to try to meet targets in kilograms, volume, or area of land. And that's the source of the child labor. That's what's driving it. So what we're doing is we're really focused on replacing piece rate wage systems with guaranteed wages, a guaranteed minimum wage that's a living wage, but most importantly, that agricultural workers, plantation workers have the freedom to organize unions through freedom of association, not just Convention 87, but Convention 11 for all workers engaged in agriculture to have the right to organize, and through organizing and collective bargaining, be able to lift their wages up. And I think that gives them the living wages and the stability needed in this situation. And that pushes back against really that compulsion, that pressure of piece rate wages in driving child labor. Concretely, we also do work around literacy and numeracy, especially for women agricultural workers, so that they can calculate and read and understand those wage slips and calculations of share of wages for sharecroppers, so they're not cheated, because wage theft, again, is another major source of poverty wages that leads to child labor. The second point on crop prices, I think people are more aware of this, of unfair crop prices. So I just want to jump to the issue underlying this. One of the key issues is all the layers of middlemen, and I mean men, between smaller marginal farmers and the crops that they sell and what is in the supply chain of companies. And an additional layer of social auditing and certification agencies that's also taking away much of that premium from small farmers and marginal farmers. And so what we're doing is we're trying to shorten the supply chain, to organize smaller marginal farmers themselves to be able to collectively bargain fairer prices directly with companies. And in return, they're able to have better incomes, fairer crop prices, and a commitment to not employ or use child labor, including their own children. And we've just did that recently in Pakistan with something that we were working on with a group that voted to change the constitution of their organization to commit to not have child labor and to secure fair crop prices. And the third factor is a little bit more challenging, because this debt arises from not having access to what are basic human rights, which is the right to food and nutrition, housing, education, and health, and especially health. Illness is a major source of debt for rural communities and their families. And so we need to tackle this debt by extending social protection as defined in ILO Recommendation 202 on the social protection floor, to extend all social protection and livelihood assistance to small and marginal farmers and agricultural workers to ensure that they're covered by this in the formal and informal sector. And I think that's the third element. And just very quickly, we link this to our work to eliminate harmful pesticides, because as we remove children from hazardous and dangerous work, that hazardous work shouldn't follow them into their homes and their communities through pesticides. We also have to eliminate pesticides in their environment as well. And that, again, we're pushing very hard on ILO Convention 184 and other health and safety measures to ensure that. And that requires all agricultural workers to have a right to organize themselves to ensure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hidayat, for highlighting the importance of the agricultural sector for the work that we do to combat child labor. Our next speaker is from ASEAN, Ms. Mega Irena, Assistant Director, Head of Labor Civil Service Division, Human Development Directorate in ASEAN Socio-Economic Cultural Community Department. Mega, we are pleased to have you with us. Recently, ASEAN adopted a roadmap on the elimination of the worst forms of child labor by 2025. Could you please share some information on the roadmap and also how ASEAN will stay engaged in the fight against child labor? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kunpin, for the kind introduction, and also thank you so much to ILO for inviting the ASEAN Secretariat to participate in this important forum. I'd just like to highlight, for those of you who are not familiar with the ASEAN roadmap on the elimination of worst form of child labor. It's a roadmap that was developed to address the prevailing child labor cases, particularly in agriculture, services, and industry sectors. These are the sectors where, based on the survey, are predominant for the child labor cases in our region. So the roadmap was adopted last year with a time frame until 2025, with clear plan of regional action, focusing on prohibition of child labor practices, prevention, and also protection of children. And we really thank ILO for your kind support throughout the process of developing this important roadmap to us. For those of you who are interested to know the details, you can find it on our website, but I just want to highlight 3 important key aspects that really support ASEAN to stay engaged in the fight against child labor through the roadmap. First of all, the roadmap aims to sustain the momentum to keep regional attention and commitment high in our region. The roadmap is not a new commitment to us, it's an extension and also expansion of the previous roadmap 2016. It provides clear guidance on what ASEAN can do collectively to support its member states in working towards zero child labor by building upon previous achievements and also lesson learned. The roadmap also provides a platform for sharing of best practices and peer learning among the member states. So that's the first aspect. The second important aspect is that the roadmap is not a standard. It is built upon other commitments of member states at global level, regional level, and national level, as well as the priorities in other relevant sectors. All 10 ASEAN member states have ratified ILO Convention 182 on worst form of child labor. We have also ratified CRC and CEDAW, and all member states are actively working towards achieving the SDG goals, including the target 8.7. So there is also a clear acknowledgement on the need to address child labor practices in the context of achieving sectoral commitments. For example, in ASEAN, we have Declaration on Strengthening Social Protection. And in this commitment, we acknowledge that strengthening social protection and its coverage is very important to make sure that livelihood of families are promoted, and therefore this contributes to the prevention of child labor. Also, for example, in the Convention of Trafficking Against Trafficking in Persons, child labor is acknowledged as one of the exploitation of trafficked persons that should be addressed in our region. We have also declaration on strengthening education for out-of-school children and youth, where this commitment is very important to minimize the risk of exploitation of children in rural areas with challenges in accessing schooling. So there are some other commitments, and therefore the roadmap is not the only framework of commitment to eliminate worst form of child labor, but it recognizes that other sectoral achievements that contribute to better prevention of child labor is also important. Thirdly, the roadmap is a multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder involvement or initiatives. So the roadmap, in time of its development since 2019 until 2020, it was a joint effort of multiple ministries in charge of labor, education, social protection, poverty eradication, law enforcement, and few other relevant sectors. So the roadmap is not only a document relevant to the labor ministry, but also other relevant ministries. It's not a commitment that is prescribed for them, but it's designed by them together to engage all of those sectors in the implementation towards holistic approach and successful results. So if we look at the content of the roadmap, it talks about regional actions to support improvement of labor protection in hard-to-reach sectors, strengthening institutional capacity of law enforcement, addressing root causes of child labor, eradicating poverty, public awareness on modern form of child labor, and so on. So you will see that the actions inside the roadmap are really cross-cutting, and it requires involvement of multiple stakeholders to ensure success. So I think these are important three aspects. The roadmap maintains momentum for high-level commitment. The roadmap is not a standalone commitment. It builds upon other commitments of member states at regional, national, and global level. And it's a multi-stakeholder initiative. So I think these are the important aspects of the roadmap that can add value to what member states are already doing at country level and also at international level. Khun Pin, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Meka. Thank you so much for such a great commitment to combat child labor at the level of ASEAN and ASEAN member states. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is representing employers organization from Vietnam. I'd like to introduce Ms. TRAN Director General, Bureau for Employers Activities, Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or VCCI. What can employers, organizations, and business enterprises do to address child labor in supply chains in Vietnam? And how do they currently doing so? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, moderator, and it's my honor to be here to represent the Vietnamese employers to share information about what we're doing in combating the child labor in supply chain in Vietnam. So we know that reducing and preventing child labor should be seen as a major goal of employers, organizations, and businesses and enterprises, as the child labor issues damages not only national socio-economic development, but also business growth. And it is a fact that the children working in the activities with high risk of accidents, extreme temperatures, and toxic environment is harmful to effort to develop the skilled and healthy workforce, and that is essential for businesses in global competitive context and supply chain. And in Vietnam, in the context of deeper international integration, we ratified the new generation of the FTA like CPTPP and EVFTA, and it is crucial to improve supply chain transparency so that information about companies, suppliers, and sourcing allocations and child labor free is readily available. And VCSI is a national organization that gathers and represents the business community, employers, and business associations in Vietnam. And over the years, we have implemented some series of activities with significant impacts in combating child labor. So I want to note that this year, 2021, marks the International Year of the Elimination of Child Labor. And in response to this, VCSI also commits an action pledge, first to engage and collaborate with employers from the Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder countries to accelerate further efforts. As you mentioned, as you know, that there are 4 countries in the regions considered as the Pathfinder countries in here. And the second is to share innovative private sector approaches for eradicating child labor. And the third is to strengthen peer learning and capacity building among Pathfinder countries and companies. And this year, we actively joined with IOE and ILO to promote the child labor elimination campaign through a series of VCSI activities as the following. The first, VCSI, under the support of the ILO Enhanced project, we developed a training materials and trainers guide and build up a group of trainers on prevention of child labor for enterprises. The objectives of the training courses here is to raise awareness about child labor, the role and the benefits of businesses in child labor prevention, and identify and select business action plan to implement child labor prevention initiatives in businesses and supply chains. And we also designed the labor code of conduct on child labor to facilitate employers with better understanding on issues related to child labor in the business, and to encourage employers to commit to implementing the agreed measures to prevent and eliminate child labor and improving working conditions for young people in the businesses. And the code of conduct also aims to create consensus, replicate the participations of employers in many different industries, sectors, and areas in implementation of activities to prevent and eliminate child labor, contributing to the common national strategy to this issue. And also, we benchmark and announce sustainable companies in Vietnam based on the Corporate Sustainability Index, CSI, and this award revised annually. And CSI is a powerful tool improving competitiveness and image of sustainable business, which is recognized by the government, ministries, and agencies, as well as by the reputable international investors and partners. So in this, we divided into 3 categories of governance, environment, and labor. So child labor protection and prevention has been reflected in governance and labor indicators. And finally, we also carrying the project named Promoting Children's Rights and Business Principles Among Enterprises in Vietnam. And this project focuses on communication and advocacy, awareness raising, and capacity building for business on different angles of children's rights in business. And based on the basis of 10 principles clarifying children's rights and business principle developed by the Save the Children, UNICEF, and the United Nations Global Compact with consultation with the business experts. And the child labor prevention and reduction related to the issues under the workplace principle, like contributing to the elimination of child labor in all businesses, activities, and business relationship, and also to provide the decent work for young workers. So above that are the activities that which one will join. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lan R, for sharing with us many initiatives, including Action Pledge by VCCI, and also many campaigns that you are leading in the country, and also as part of the IOE at the global level. Our next speaker is from the government of the Philippines, Ma KARINA PERIDA-TRAYVILLA, Director, Department of Labor and Employment. Director KARINA, welcome. We are pleased to have you with us. As a country that was one of the first to work on child labor with the ILO in the early 90s, I remember working with the Philippines in the early 90s myself. What are some of the, like talking to old friends, what are some of the emerging good practices in the Philippines that could be scaling up? The floor is yours. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's really good to know that you have been in the Philippines working on the issue of child labor. We believe that the Philippines has several good practices, and one of this is a blueprint called the Philippine Program Against Child Labor, which is closely working on intermediate outcomes until the year 2022. So we wanted to achieve first a strengthened and localized National Council Against Child Labor towards better coordination of its members and partners. We also wanted to see an improved and inclusive enforcement of anti-child labor laws. We plan to have an expanded access of child laborers, including their families, to social protection, health, education, child protection, and decent work. Fourth, we wanted to see a more improved generation, dissemination, and use of knowledge and data on child labor among the stakeholders, the policymakers, program implementers, and the general public as well. And of course, an established and well-maintained national child labor monitoring evaluation system. It is also important that the issue of child labor is mainstream in the development policy of the country. And so it is included in the Philippine Development Plan of 2017 to 2022. And under that plan, we made a specific target to remove at least 630,000 children from child labor by 2022. And this is the Philippines' contribution to the achievement of target 8.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, overseeing this commitment under the Philippine program as well as the development plan of the Philippines is the National Council Against Child Labor, which is a structure authorized by an executive fiat and mandated to upscale the implementation of the program. And this is an expanded version of the old committee. Now it has a composition of 19 government agencies as well as representatives from workers, employers, and civil society organizations. Aside from this structure, we also have the Interagency Council Against Trafficking and Against Child Pornography, which is also related to addressing the issue of child labor. And looking at the local structure, we have the Local Council for the Protection of Children. We have down to the lowest level, the Barangay Council for the Protection of Children, or the Village Council for the Protection of Children. We see that as the first entry point, as an important mechanism for the efficient and effective implementation of all policies, programs, and projects on the major activities concerning children, including child labor. Now, on labor inspection, we have child labor indicators that have been included in the labor inspection checklist. Let me add also that we are continuing our profiling activities. We have been profiling since 2018 so that we will be able to locate and identify the children who will be referred and provided with appropriate services and eventually removed from child labor. Likewise, the Department of Social Welfare and Development has its contribution on we call the Project SHIELD, or the Strategic Help Desk for information, education, livelihood, and other development interventions against child labor projects. These also contribute in the profiling as well as establishing a local registry on child labor. And so, based on our data, the profiling activities of both DOLE, and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, including the International Labor Organization, we now have a total of 270,000 child laborers profiled. And of this, we have already removed 57,000, almost 57,000 children removed from child labor. Now, let me emphasize this important approach that we have been adopting. It's called the whole of society approach. We believe it's crucial in working towards the prevention and elimination of child labor. And this we adopted in addressing the poor working conditions and the child labor problems in one small village in a locality in the Philippines. There were changes that we have experienced because of the help of all the stakeholders, of all actors, national and local, even civil society organization. One is that the children stopped working in small-scale gold mining. They have returned to schooling. They were given educational assistance. Even a secondary school in the village was also built through the help of the Department of Education. And the way they do small-scale mining has been transformed. They no longer use mercury, and now they are adopting gravity concentration method, which also addresses the issue on pollution and environmental concerns. And to add
Director
that, there is
Karina, I
also
have
a
to ask you to sum
diversification
up,
of,
please.
yes, okay, there's
Can you sum up, please?
diversification
Thank
of
you.
their livelihood into aquaculture farming. And lastly, last point, if I may add, we also help them the association transition into formal organization by registering them, thereby opening more opportunities for this organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to cut you. I know that you have a lot to share, but
Sorry.
thank you so much for many of those important experiences that you have highlighted. Our next speaker is from the Coca-Cola Company. I welcome Ms. Subha SEKHAR, Regional Director for Human Rights, South Asia, Middle East, and Eurasia, and Global Ventures. Thank you for joining us, Subha. What about the private sector? How can it improve working conditions and eliminate child labor in agriculture and also in the informal economy? Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam, and really honored to be part of this panel. Now, addressing child labor sits at the very heart of the UNGPs and SDGs due to the nexus between poverty, vulnerability, and child labor. And in turn, child labor leads to entrenched poverty, as the children will remain at the margins of the labor market when they become adults, and thereby perpetuating the vicious cycle of poverty, vulnerability, and risk. And obviously, business too has an important role to play because they are part of local and global supply chains during in the various layers. And so a couple of points on how business can play their part is first, as was mentioned by another speaker, that business needs to prioritize this issue and take full supply chain approach in terms of its governance. Now, while it is easier to address child labor within the four walls of the manufacturing locations, the canvas becomes vast, complex, and deep supply chains, especially agriculture supply chains, where over 70% of child labor can be found. And the issue here is that brands don't have direct line of sight or direct relationship or leverage beyond Taiwan, and this adds to the complexity. Therefore, business needs to build its understanding of where child labor exists in its supply chain by conducting due diligence with a mix of measures at different levels of supply chain. And obviously, no one measure is sufficient because supply chains can be complex, Taiwan, Tier 2, at times hidden. And then by gaining this visibility deeper in the supply chains, business will have the opportunity to map the supply webs. Supply chains are not straight lines. They are like spaghetti. They are like webs, where it also gets into other supply chains. And so it is important to have an understand the status of child labor, other labor rights. What are the drivers of child labor? Because drivers might be different in different markets. And even, within a country, there could be, different drivers depending on regional aspects especially for larger countries, identify the control points, because that's very important to understand the control points to really, kind of focus on, remediation. Collaborate with suppliers beyond, below tier 1, communicate the requirements, build supply chain, capability, and then drive more holistic remediation. Now, given the magnitude, complexity, and urgency of the issue, the ecosystem players need to come and look at opportunities to collaborate, to drive scale, to pull in resources, even more in the COVID scenario where resources are, limited, and leverage collective strengths. Now, I would like to give an example of a large multi-stakeholder partnership in agriculture, which Coca-Cola is part of. This is called the Harvesting the Future project in Turkey, where we are partnering with Fair Labor Association, which is the implementing partner. There are 7 other major brands, 19 Turkish suppliers, the Turkish government, and other stakeholders also who are part of it. So this draws from a shared vision of the FLA, the Fair Labor Association, Coca-Cola, and the partners to bring about large-scale change on child protection and responsible recruitment by pursuing a multi-commodity, multi-company, multi-stakeholder approach. Now, just a little bit about the project that every year, thousands of seasonal workers migrate to agricultural farms across Turkey, and they move from crop to crop along with their families. And it is common for children to work alongside their parents to contribute to the household income. Now, while the agricultural commodities are different and the supply chains are different, it is the same workforce which goes from commodity to commodity. So this model is really powerful, to show the interconnectedness of supply chains and the need for all the ecosystem players to come together to really drive scale, change, and to look at it holistically. Because if individual companies only worked in their agri supply chain, one would not be really looking at the issue from a larger point of view. So phase 1 of this project focused on increasing supply chain transparency, conducting due diligence at the farm level, and understanding risks. And this helped identify various issues, including child labor risks and hazardous work by young workers, apart from a whole other areas. And phase 2, which will be starting soon, will focus on remediation. Now that this whole area has been mapped, one understands what are the drivers, and it will be focusing on remediation with a whole range of holistic measures, capability building, embedding these requirements within the supplier way of working, looking at childcare, looking at opportunities for referring them to existing ILO and government of Turkey schools, and a whole range of other measures. So for want of time, I will not get into the details, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Subha. Yes, indeed, I think the importance of working along the supply chain, and I think the experience of the Fair Labor Association is really important and good that you share that with us. Our last speaker is from the CSO. I welcome Mr. Ahmad MARZUKI from CHARAK, Indonesia. CHARAK is a network of CSO in Indonesia for the elimination of child labor. Mr. MARZUKI, how can the different stakeholders involved in the fight against child labor collaborate at the national level? And how do you see the role of JARAK in fostering such a collaboration? Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, moderator. My view that international effort to elimination of child labor is running progressively. Its effort has been transformed in various instruments, as like UN Convention, the Right of the Child, ILO Convention 138 and 182, Child Right and Business Principle, SDGs, also policy for global supply chain. Each country, including my country, Indonesia, has ratified and adopted its instrument as a national policy and commitment. Further, our challenge is how to actualize the policy to become integrated action to make a better impact for child labor and family. for response of this in national level, I think we have 4 main challenges. The first, existing of child labor still significant. We have average the 8 million, atau 7% from the total of the children. And majority child labor in agriculture. And the second, the issue of child labor integrated with the dimension cross-cutting issue. It have relationship with drop out school, poverty, and other issue. And the third, many policy in the national and also in province and district already adopted. But how to accelerate the policy from many policy to practices in action? This is the last, our response atau stakeholder response still in sectoral and temporary approach. So basically we need comprehensive and sustainability approach to again child labor. To respond this, atau to respond the challenge, we JARA I think have to approach. The first, we involve in multi-stakeholder coordination. It lead by the government. I think it government from the especially the Ministry of Development Planning, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, and also Ministry of Manpower. Its coordination should be followed by the government, non-government organization, trade union, also business level. This process is needed to make sure that effective policy and the synergize in action. How to make the effective policy and synergize in action. The second, it is more specifically, as I said that the majority of child labor in agriculture, so we need we develop the partnership of child labor in agriculture. My name is PAKLA Indonesia, the Partnership for Action Against Child Labor in Agriculture. It the specific collaboration or by partnership approach. The partnership is integrated approach and collective action in the prevention and also in direct action for children and their family by involving the government, NGO, and business sector in business sector. The added value from this process is all stakeholders involved, and also we work together to facilitate sharing of various good practices among stakeholders. And this partnership coordinated by the Bappenas and JARA as a national secretariat. I think this is to process to initiate how to bring the collaboration and coordination.
Marzuki, sorry to interrupt. Can you sum up, please?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, to push the effective way to against child labor in national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry to interrupt panelists and all speakers. It's just that we are running slightly behind schedule. Having said that, actually, now I'd like to actually give each panel's list the second round for 1 minute, one minute each. So let me first start with Mega Irena from ASEAN Secretariat. Meka, if you have one last minute to highlight one most important point for the regional level collaboration, the floor is yours, just for 1 minute. And one most important point, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunpin. Difficult to identify one most important point. I think there are so many important points.
I know.
But I think after listening to other speakers, especially I think all speakers emphasize the importance of collaboration among multiple stakeholders, including businesses. So I just want to highlight the good practice that ASEAN adopted in time of developing the roadmap, and that is having an inclusive process. The example of the roadmap, for example, in time of its development, it was not only developed by governments, but it was a process that involved tripartite partners and also civil society representatives. In fact, we also invited some representatives from the private companies. So this inclusive process since the beginning is very important to promote ownership of all stakeholders. And therefore the commitments should not be seen as the responsibility of one sector only or one particular ministry only, but it should be a joint results of joint hands of different sectors. And secondly, it's important that many of the best practices in these multi-stakeholder collaborations are well documented. There are not many people out there who have access to information such as what we have now in this forum. And therefore, in the roadmap, for example, to promote such collaboration, we try to leverage the added value of ASEAN, and that is as a platform of mutual learning. One of the actions that we plan is to document the business models in global supply chains and identify good practices in addressing child labor in the global supply chain. So by documenting these business models, we hope that we will be able to contribute to the efforts of promoting and inspiring actions in the region. Thank you. Over to you, Kunpin.
Thank you so much, Meka. Mr. Nam, also from Vietnam side, also 1 minute. And if you can highlight one most important lessons learned, just one, the most important one. Thank you.
Một bài học
Over to
quan trọng
you.
nhất mà mình đã học cái thực tiễn thực hiện vừa qua. Yes, I would like to emphasize the three important lessons. The first one is regarding to international commitment. We attach the child labor issues with the international commitment, which is in line with international conventions and the new generation free trade agreement. In cooperation with other stakeholders, we emphasize the roles of the businesses. We are not only focused on just one company, but we also focus on the whole supply chains and the business related to these supply chains. And we also focus on raising the awareness of the business to monitor labor charts in their supply chain network. Because for our government alone, we cannot supervise and monitor all their activities, and it is for the business and companies themselves to help government to monitor and supervise their own business and their activities. and the two most important lesson we have drawn from our practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Nam. Next, Dr. Hidayat, can you highlight one recommendations in 1 minute? One recommendation, please.
Sure, thank you.
I
I
know you
want
have
to
a tough
emphasize
job.
again the importance.
Go
Thank you.
ahead,
I just
please.
want to emphasize again the importance of freedom of association for all agricultural, farm, and plantation workers. Having that access to freedom of association being vital to their ability to collectively bargain and lift themselves and their families out of poverty. This year is the 100th anniversary of ILO Convention number 11 for all workers engaged in agriculture, and we need to ensure they have that freedom of association and the right to collective bargaining in all workplaces and throughout supply chains or farms, fields, and plantations. And that for us is an absolute priority in order to addressing the key drivers of child labor in agriculture. Thank you.
Super from Coca-Cola. The same, your 1 minute. What is your most important policy? Your most important child labor policies in the supply chain, please. 1 minute. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have two human rights policies which specifically do not permit child labor. But I'd like to say there are 2 or 3 things which are very important, for us in terms of our implementation of our human rights. First is that embed these requirements within the company and across the internal processes, whether it's procurement, whether it's supplier authorization, human resources. Second would be capacity building. I mean, I cannot stress less both internal and supply chain constituents. And third is due diligence at a number of levels, at factory levels, at deeper supply chain, and in the various supply chains in the agricultural area commodity, that is priority commodity. So these are the 2 or 3 big focus areas for us. And I would be failing if I not mention that as one of the founding members of the CLP, we recognize the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement in efforts to eradicate child labor, and we are participating in the pledge, and we will continue to prioritize this very important area and look at various measures to broaden our understanding and to look at remediation and multi-stakeholder frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next, Ms. Lan Ah, VCCI, similar to others from your VCCI experience, if you can highlight one most important recommendation, please. Go ahead, 1 minute. Can you unmute yourself, please? We cannot hear you. You have to unmute, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So from the Vietnamese employer's point of view, I think that besides the active different forms and ways of communication, advocacy, awareness raising, and capacity building for business on child labor elimination. So in order to take the most of achievements in child labor elimination in the whole supply chain in the context of global economic integration today, it is crucial to involve all the important stakeholders, including enterprise, representative business associations, policymakers, social organizations. Also recommend that there should be more such kind of social dialogue and other information experience sharing activities and modeling of the child labor eliminations practices among the FTA members countries, particularly those at the same level with our countries and those who are key potential partners of Vietnam. So that's the case of Vietnam recommendation. Thank you. It's back to you.
Thank you so much. Next, Director KARINA. Like others, to maintain for child labor to remain a priority during the COVID-19 pandemic, what would be one most important recommendation from your point of view? Go ahead.
Yeah, what we did is really to mitigate the impact, the economic impact and the labor market shock brought about by COVID-19 pandemic. And so we prevent children from entering child labor. And we continuously conduct our profiling activities and then the eventual removal of child laborers from being in such a situation. And then, of course, we make sure that our existing structures are fully functioning, and we utilize, optimize online platforms so that we raise awareness, continuously raise awareness about child labor, and continue the discussion at the national and the local level. And of course, this situation is really challenging, but we really need to upscale our efforts, create horizontal and vertical linkages, and adopt a whole of society approach. And so in our country, we relentlessly continue working together to address child labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director KARINA. Mr. MARZUKI, like others, what is the most important recommendation for child labor to maintain the priority as part of the COVID-19 response from the CSO perspective? Go ahead, 1 minute. Thank you.
My perspective is three things. The first is how to strengthen data to capture the impact of COVID-19 for children. Impact in education, poverty, employment, social, and also specifically for child rate and child labor. And the third, how to direct intervention or the prevention for impact of children by the COVID situation, especially the priority in treating how to prevent child marriage and also reducing violence against child labor, also touching child labor. It's become the integrated response. And the third is how to make direct intervention in the grassroots level, for example, for children in the village, in the poor family, and like this is. But this is they have the great impact to existing of child labor. And the last, I think, for fulfilling child labor, child right on child labor should be priority in any situation, in normal situation or emergency situation. This is my view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. MARZUKI. Before the Q&A, there is a request from the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. Ms. Niharika Chopra would like to say a few words. Niharika, the floor is yours for 2 minutes, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Are
Please.
you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'll be brief, and it was wonderful listening to the various initiatives spoken of today. I'll be brief in just expanding on Mr. Satyarthi's message earlier in the effort on the Fair Share to End Child Labour campaign that our organization, in collaboration with the DGILO, the WHO, the Secretary General of OECD, and Deputy at the UNESCO, along with several others, launched earlier this year. And the focus of the campaign is to be able to build a global and national coalitions on bringing together various players to address the fundamental root cause of child labor across the world. We are looking at the fact that the pandemic is posing the risk of turning the clock back on the progress that we have achieved over the many years that have passed. And it was in the last year in 2020, we launched a report on the fair share for children, where we recognized that in the year 2020, of the $8 trillion that were announced as COVID relief globally, only 0.13% were allocated to the most marginalized communities and the children through multilateral assistance. And this would most definitely lead to an increase in child labor within supply chains and in home-based and other forms of child labor. The demands of the campaign are essentially demanding for a fair share of financial resources in national budgets and ODA, along with private participation, a fair share in policies and laws. We're demanding for mandatory due diligence laws and enforcement of existing laws. We hope to understand to establish that guidelines are no longer as effective as the law, while working with business champions, those who have shown intent, and those who have been able to be champions in the field of elimination of child labor. Child labor cannot be eliminated in a vacuum. The child who is working in child labor is the same child who is denied education, who is working in fields or in homes, the child who is denied healthcare, social protection, or living in intergenerational poverty and communities that face discrimination. To be able to address this, we are building coalitions of businesses, of trade and teacher unions, of civil societies, Nobel laureates, employers and businesses, faith leaders, civil society organizations. We have partnered with the IPU, the International Parliamentarian Union, to work with governments to increase their partnership with businesses and civil society and other stakeholders to ensure that child labor becomes central to their policy making and enforcement, especially during this international year. We are also working with businesses recognizing their genuine good intent. And the study in 2019 called the Decade to Deliver recognized that 70% of the CEOs believed that they had a critical role to play in the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals, whereas only 21% were actually able to translate that into practices. So we want to work with businesses along with other stakeholders to ensure that the multi-sectoral approach of child labor will bring together all of the various players to help businesses and to hold them accountable. Lastly, survivors remain at the core of our campaign. We want to be able to amplify their voices on all important international, regional, and national fora to be able to facilitate a dialogue between survivors and various agencies working on child labor, government and non-government, to essentially make their voices heard in the global efforts against child labor. We hope to be able to achieve this beginning this year, but of course...
Marika, can you sum up, please? Can you please sum up? Thank you.
I'm done.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You have to sum up now. Thank you.
And we hope to work with partners and establish strong partnerships through the year with governments and across, and I hope that we can take the engagement with the participants today beyond this platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Time for question and answer. We have the question. The first question, we have some, I think we can manage one question at least. What could be done to reach out more widely to the informal sector? Perhaps among the panelists. Director Karina, would you like to comment on this one? What could be done to reach out more widely to the informal sector?
Yes, we could implement what we have adopted under the ILO recommendation 204 on the transitioning informal to formality. Will be able to help more informal sector formalize into associations and be registered even as businesses, micro businesses. So that is one area where we can reach out more informal sector workers. And also let's engage the local government units down to the village level so that we will be able to provide their services, will be able to reach the informal sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hidayat, would you like to comment also about the reaching out to the informal sector? Go ahead.
Again, I think it's important that we recognize that we're, in terms of the application of labor rights, the definition of agricultural and plantation workers is far too narrow, the definition of rural workers. And so in terms of the informal sector, we want to see a broader range of occupations and roles in agriculture of all workers engaged in agriculture, as Convention 11 defines it, to be recognized as agricultural workers, not just those under a formal waged employment relationship, and to extend all social protection and livelihood assistance to those workers, but also to extend all of the aspects of occupational health and safety and protection of labor rights into the informal sector through recognition that all workers engaged in agriculture, regardless of employment relationships, have these rights, both rights as workers and in terms of access to trade union rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps Ms. Tantilan A from VCCI, would you like to comment on this point, reaching out more to the informal sectors? Go ahead.
Yes, so reaching more to the informal sector, I think it's very important because according to the numbers of the child labor in many countries, that the issues of child labor in the informal sectors is very severe. Is that in the factories we can identify and prevent it, but in the informal sectors it's not easy to identify because the children working for the families, for the household. So it is very important to have the involvement of the local authorities, the business associations, and the parents. So they need to be aware, have awareness raising to prevent them, and also the local economic development. Also one of the key issue to help the parents improve their economic situation. So it's also one of the method to prevent the child labor in the informal sector. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Meka, would you like to comment also? Informal economy is so important and central to the work of ASEAN. Would you like to comment on reaching out to the informal economy?
Thank you, Kunpin. Glad that you asked me, because clearly informal sector is predominant in our region. This has been an important issue that is not easy to tackle, but efforts are ongoing. I want to highlight 3 important initiatives in the ASEAN roadmap. First is strengthening labor inspection in the hard-to-reach sector, and that certainly quite major in terms of informal sector, and this is very important in strengthening the capacity, especially in time of pandemic like this. There is a need for new approaches to make labor inspection more effective with limited resources. Second of all, the roadmap also calls for streamlining the registration of small businesses in the informal sector. Registration of small businesses is very important, is contributing to the efforts of preventing child labor. And thirdly, also strengthening social protection for workers working in the informal sectors, so that families with low income would not be in a situation where they have to compromise and jeopardize the well-being of their children and vulnerabilities to fall into the trap of child labor. So I think these are the important 3 elements, and we continue to take joint efforts to address these issues at ASEAN level. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Meka. Supa, I would like you to comment on this point related to informal economy, but very much about the supply chain, basically how to get stakeholders involved and to drive down the fight against child labor in the deeper tiers, the supply chain. So if you can comment in 1 minute, as we are running out of time. Thank you so much, Supa.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, this is a very important area, but it's very mindful to realize that informal sector is not one homogeneous mass. There are different types of informal sector, and they are part of different supply chains. So for every business, it's important to understand which of this informal sector comes within their supply chain. And so in ours, for example, agriculture and agricultural supply chain is important, and so due diligence is the way where one gets a better understanding and looks at as I mentioned earlier, looks at what is the shape, what is the form, what are the control points, and then kind of remediates highlights it. And obviously, these are very, very complex issues requiring not just one company, but a broader business and multi-stakeholders to come together to address the complex array of issues, including obviously child labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supa. So I take the last 1 minute as the moderator today. In conclusion, I hope you all have enjoyed this session. I think it's very rich session. Our speakers have shared a wealth of experience in our region. Clearly, a lot have been done and lots of progress have been made to combat child labor in our region by different stakeholders, government, private sector, CSO, business, workers' organization, community, and children themselves, etc. So I think we have a lot of experience. We have huge knowledge and expertise with us in the region. Going forward, I think it's very important that we convert and make use of all of these lessons learned, experience, and expertise that we have in the region to really spearhead, take another round of concerted efforts to combat child labor, taking into account the fact that now we all are facing additional challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And clearly, while I have said that the region has made good progress, we have achieved a lot, we still have pretty large number of children remain in child labor in our region. Therefore, more action is needed, more partnership is needed. Therefore, let us continue to put our joint efforts together. And this year, the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor, is so crucial that we can rally among all stakeholders at local, at national, at regional, and also the global level, so that we all can come together to bring an end to child labor as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your participation. I'd like to thank all speakers. I'd like to thank our translators. I'd like to thank UNICEF as the co-organizers of this panel discussion today. Thank you so much. Have a good day.